We're going to talk a little bit about what we think kids need in schools and how they should think about kind of their new learning environment, especially as we come back to school in the fall and everything's been turned upside down and there's going to be more remote learning and such. And so I'm kind of excited on this topic because I think the more we could understand how kids think, the better we could adapt school systems to meet them to be the most successful humans that we possibly can help them be. So first of all, I think it'd be helpful, Justin, just to talk about your own personal experience and why this matters to you, this topic of like a student's journey through a school.
As a Black male in education, someone who is a first generation college graduate, I'm also the oldest sibling of four. And so I got a chance to see how different my journey was compared to my younger siblings. And so growing up, I was designated as a gifted and talented student. And so I often tell people that I believe the system worked for me. When I was given that designation, I was given access to a number of different enrichment experiences, summer camps, and opportunities there that ultimately led to me attending a college prep boarding school. I felt really validated in my work and in my goals, and ultimately felt like I had a community really pushing for me to be successful. And so when I got a chance to get a full ride to a college and ultimately really enjoy that experience, I immediately, once I graduated from school, wanted to give back and get back into the classroom to try to find ways to bring as many of those rich opportunities to as many students as possible. Take this time to really better understand these populations, often these marginalized student populations, because I think the more we talk with them and learn from them, we will better be able to understand ways to reach them.
At what point in your career or life did you realize that your educational experience made a difference in your overall outcome?
So I would say it honestly came pretty immediately post-graduation. So I secured a teaching role early into my senior year and felt like I had a very clear vision for how I was going to utilize the rest of my college career to prepare me for the professional world. Around that time was also the time when my younger siblings were meant to be making similar decisions around high school graduation and in the next level. And because of their experiences, I saw the vast difference in the options that they had access to compared to me. You could look at the pattern of, we went to the same elementary schools, same middle schools, but then we shifted at the high school level. And that was where ultimately I got validation to go to a great, top ranked school. And I saw the different options of validation and a lack of validation that they received.
Can you describe, is this you don't feel like this is a special case just for you? I mean, we know many people that have the same experience. Can you just describe a little bit in terms of what the magnitude of this is?
I worked at an independent school for my first couple of years teaching, and it was a really wonderful experience and an experience that I consistently lean back on for some of the best teaching practices that I was introduced to that I like to use. However, I felt like it was important that I learned that I really gave back to the communities of color and wanted to bring my voice, my perspective, and my support there where I thought it was needed most. And that was when I started to see the wide range of, again, that variance of options and that lack of quality that I mentioned for my own family. That's when I started to see that this was more of a systemic issue. I started to understand why people talked about the systems level needing to change. And it started with the way that I was being introduced to quality teaching practices. The way that we were talking about our students, the goals that we had for them, the vision, the assumptions that we had for where they were going to go after spending 2 to 4 years with us was completely different than the way that I experienced myself, and then also the way that I was taught to teach at an independent institution.
With that, what I want to shift into is I know you have 5 or 6 different key rules that you wanted to start building out, but let's just focus on 2 for now. So what's one rule that our audiences can think about? Like, what's one important step that you experience and what you think other students need to experience in order to start with the right mindset for school?
Yes, so ultimately I believe that many students feel like school is currently being done to them. It's a place that they're told they need to attend. Anytime they have any kind of pushback when it comes to that conversation, there's literally no alternative other than alternative schools, right? I think this is an important time for folks to really have a conversation to really understand, why am I attending school? What am I hoping to get from this? What is my purpose? And how do I believe school can help me achieve that purpose? And ultimately, when that conversation is, when that answer only comes to you when you get validation from what college you get to attend or what your salary is for your job, um, we start to see a lot of individuals kind of fall by the wayside, as they're not able to experience that. That's kind of a one of a kind experience for you to really receive that validation. But if you can start and utilize this time to have those conversations now, I really do believe that folks will be able to enter their schools, whether it's a hybrid learning situation or a distance learning situation, with a better understanding as to what they're hoping to get from this experience.
I mean, basically, you're talking about like just being really clear on the purpose and reflecting on the role of school in your life. What does that actually look? How do you actually do that? Like, I mean, you did it, so I'm curious. Like, what does that actually look like, and how do you go about it? Because I don't think that's something students necessarily think about. You just kind of think, well, I'm in the motion, right? And I go to the next year and whatever. And I don't think that I've ever reflected on why I'm at a certain school.
Well, I actually think this is a great time to take advantage of the imagination that I believe many students of color, the deep imagination I believe many students of color have. And what I mean by that is, in order to already see yourself as a successful person in this society, you often already have to have a pretty vivid imagination to see yourself as different than what messages, whether it's in the media or what you hear in classrooms, are often portrayed. Believe that right now, if you talk to students, if you talk to young people, and that is actually one of the most important steps I believe people can take right now, is actually talking to students and asking them questions. If you talk to them and ask them what they want to achieve, what they're hoping to do, they often do have answers. Now, I believe those answers can be more malleable as they get support from adults to have them shift and pivot their visions as they get older, and maybe shift their goals. But right now, I think a lot of the issue is just that adults are uncomfortable with the answers that students give them. Right? If students say that I want to be Baby Shark, they don't actually mean that I want to be a cartoon. No, they say, I see how popular this one song is and how it is still something that I can say it immediately. And we all already know we can start to even sing the song in our mind. They're starting to think that I want to be not viral because viral looks fun. Viral seems impactful. Viral seems powerful, right? I want to be powerful. I want to be understood and I want to be heard. And so that's often what students are telling us. And we're just not comfortable with the answer that we're getting. And so I believe that right now it starts with a simple conversation. What are you hoping to get out of this? What do you want to be? And then really taking a step back to listening to them, and then taking some time to actually help them figure out what that path may look like right now, and give them that real support.
So this leads me to kind of another point that you had brought up that we briefly talked about is, you know, this notion of digital
Yeah.
literacy and
Yeah.
tech competence. And I think that like our understanding of digital literacy is a bit outdated. And the problem is we haven't changed it in 20 years. And technology's changed completely in 20 years. So I'd be curious, what are the digital skills that you think students need now? And I think you and I were talking a little bit about like the coding is something that is kind of dated now. It's not the thing that we think students need. So
Well, it's funny. First off, I feel like you and I have discussed this and even experienced this together. But right now, as most of us who have this kind of voice and platform have shifted to remote work or working virtually, there's been almost this paradox, and I call it the education paradox, when it feels like the more educated you are, it also feels sometimes like the more you seem to struggle with technology, and it totally takes away the value from what you're trying to say, or often the long introduction that you got with why you're being the keynote virtual speaker or something. And so I think what we're realizing right now is that students are a lot more comfortable with technology in certain ways. Again, it just may not be the Chromebooks that we continue to give them in schools, right? So the first thing is that I've heard a lot of us talk about students who don't have access to technology or to Wi-Fi, and that's been a really confounding issue for many schools. And so something that was always arresting to me as a school admin was that my students who seem to have the least technology access have the most Facebook pages, and they have the most Finstagram pages, and they seem to be very active on social media, whether it was through borrowing a friend's device or utilizing their mother's cell phone. I do believe that these students, they are tapped in, and they actually are more connected than we think. And so the first, so my first point, yeah, like you said, coding is a little bit, it's cool for a population of folks, but I don't think I don't think that movement is necessarily as relevant as it is relevant today as maybe it was, a few years ago. And I think right now it's important that people become a lot more comfortable and competent on camera. Right. So ultimately, this is how people are sharing thoughts right now. This is how people are connecting. And we do not know when this kind of pandemic will end in terms of how we'll be really reintroducing ourselves back into society. And so the best way right now to prepare our students is not to think about the math skills they're losing and to give them more time doing math work. It's to actually really recognize what skills they have developed during this time, and a lot of them have developed a lot more clear communication skills. So they're able to, whether it's the ways that they are turning in their work and finding ways to do that through picture form, through written form, also through form of video, it's how can we really help start to build that skill within students more often. I think we saw a lot of our educators were not as comfortable or competent on camera either, and it made a lot of their instructional experiences even less engaging than they were in person. And so I think that that's something that everybody right now needs to be spending a little bit more time on. We need to figure out ways to be clearer with how we speak. We need to be comfortable with this being the new way of public speaking, and really start to take that away from being one of the top rated fears, and take that as being one of the ways that we're really comfortable acknowledging people and connecting with them.
So just to wrap up here, I know that we only talked about two of your key points, but I would like to close with kind of all of them so that people can anticipate what you're going to be coming out with in the near future. So can you just rattle off like what you think the most important rules are, or the key points that every student should consider?
Yeah, it'd be really important for students to know, again, their why and their personal context around school. What are they hoping that to get out of school, and why are they attending school? It's also important that they're aware of what they're walking into. Know your school's history. Understand what resources and offerings are available to you, so you don't spend your time asking for things that are already there, and you can instead let people know more clearly what you need from day one. And so it is important that students start to understand that they need to be just as clear as the way they want to define success for themselves, so they can bring that definition and collaborate with the folks who care for them to have a clearer, more supportive way of really looking at success. I believe any successful student, by the way, has a really clear daily schedule. And so they use this structure as a way to identify spaces where they have freedom to work, freedom to create, freedom to connect, as opposed to feeling locked down by the day-to-day expectations of their school, of their classes and their school structure. And then ultimately, like I said, it's really important that we utilize our technology competence as being the great equalizer. You don't necessarily need to have a PhD to be able to turn on a camera and start sharing some of your thoughts. That may not be, the best in long term, but in short term, when we're working with kids, this is a great way for them to start to express themselves more clearly and more directly. And we know this skill is future proof. This will be necessary for the next couple of decades.
I love that. I think these points are such essential ingredients that every administrator should be looking at as they rethink what school might look like going forward, because there's no reason at this point we should go back to the models that we had before. We've got to push forward. And if we don't have the vision for the students, then it's really hard to design around that. And so I really appreciate these ideas. And I would say, people should look out for more of these things to be fleshed out in the near future, so that we can all think about how to implement these so that every child is successful in the schools that we serve.